All right, today let's have some fun. And we're going to go through the transfer portal so far as of recording this because a lot can change. It's April 8th at 12:30 when I'm recording this. And we're going to just look at the ACC today. We're going to go through each team and kind of look at who I think are some of the winners early on and unfortunately, some of the losers. So let's get right into it. So, first off, we're going to start with Boston College. Boston College, as of right now, has lost four players to the portal, although technically Josh Beadle and Chaz Kelly could come back. And Dion Brown and Elijah Strong, I should say. Dion Brown has found a new home with St. Louis. The only guy they've brought in is Aiden Shaw. So far, not a great portal run for Boston College. Next up, we have California, the Golden Bears. And if I can get this to work here, the Golden Bears have lost a number of players. BJ Omat, Josh Olajoseph, although he hasn't found a new home. And then guys like, Hugh Vandaway, Jaden Goodall, Stephon Marbury, they didn't play. So the real losses, BJ Omat, who started the year, got hurt. And then Josh Olajoseph was part of the rotation. And obviously the big one is Jeremiah Wilkinson returning to his home state of Georgia. It's a tough loss for this Cal team, which I really think could have been really building something with Wilkinson and Stojakovic. I think as of now, Stojakovic is going to stick around. They did bring in a couple of nice pieces in Day-Day Ames, and Day-Day Ames certainly is a replacement for Wilkinson. Not as good of a player, but a replacement. And then Milos Ilic, who averaged some pretty good numbers for Loyola Maryland this past season as a 6'10 big man. Clemson, I gotta say, as of right now, Clemson looks like a team that has taken a step back with the transfer portal. Losing guys like Dell Jones, Jake Highbreeder, I know wasn't great. Chauncey Wiggins hurts. Christian Reeves hurts their depth. Actually, I may have to take this back. They've kind of done a decent job in getting some pieces in. They've lost Shefflin and Lakin due to eligibility. They bring in Carter Welling here and Nick Davidson to replace them. So they've got their two 6'10 guys coming in. And then RJ Godfrey comes back. So I just think they've lost a lot of the depth guys, but they were able to bring in rotation guys to replace what they lost. I'm curious what the rest of the moves look like for Clemson, who was one of the top three teams in the ACC this past season. Duke hasn't made any transfers. No one coming in, no one coming out as of yet. Florida State, a lot of movement with Florida State here. So they have a ton of guys leaving. Start with that. So Daquan Davis is going to Providence. Chandler Jackson still out in the portal. Taylor Bowen has gone to Alabama. Christian Nitu still out in the portal. Hold on. Here we go. Jerry Dang still out there. I think he's a good piece. I think a lot of teams could use. And Malik Ewan, another notable guy, still out in the portal. They brought in a lot of guys. Alex Steen, Lajay Jones from St. Bonaventure, Chauncey Wiggins coming over from Clemson, interconference transfer there. And then Robert McCray and Kobe McGee. A lot of mid-major guys are coming in. So I got to take a look at some of these guys individually because I'm not as familiar with their games. But, overall a good start, it seems, just getting a bunch of guys in at Florida State for the new head coach there. Now, Georgia Tech. So far, looks like one of the bigger losers of the conference transfer portal offseason. They have four guys leaving the program via the portal. Now, one of them, Dorian Amuchekwa, he basically left in, I think, December. His playing time went down, and then all of a sudden he was out for personal reasons, and it seemed like he was not happy with his reduced playing time, but he was not playing well. So it was understandable. The three other guys are much more significant rotation players and starters at the end of last season, and one of their two best players in Nathan George, who went to Syracuse along with Ibrahim Saore. who went to Syracuse, and Duncan Powell, a really underrated guy, transferred to Georgia Tech last season. Wasn't talked about as one of the notable transfers, but really carved out a nice role for Georgia Tech last season. Will be at Georgetown this coming season. Next up, we've got Louisville, one of the bigger winners of the transfer portal, in my opinion. Only losing Corin Johnson, who didn't play last season due to injury. Curious to see where he ends up, but getting 3 tremendous guards. Isaac McNeely, we all know from Virginia, one of the better shooters in college basketball. Can shoot, catch and shoot, but also running around screens and in motion, a rare skill most shooters do not have. Ryan Conwell, one of the better scorers for Xavier last season, was part of the Indiana State team 2 years ago. Just a really good guard. And then Adrian Woolley, a guy who a lot of the top programs were after. I know Alabama, Auburn, I think Kansas as well were also trying to get Woolley. Just a really big pickup for Louisville. They've got a lot of guards coming in. They have a highly touted freshman coming in next season as well. So curious to see how it all fits together, but a good problem to have for Coach Kelsey. Next up, Miami. They've obviously lost most of their roster to the transfer portal, but it wasn't a very good team last year. Nigel Pack is the only notable player. I mean, Jalil Bethea, of course, as well. He kind of underwhelmed for them last season, but I really don't blame him. It was a tough situation. So let's talk about some of the guys they brought in for Coach Lucas. Trey Donaldson, a really good, steady point guard who will have 1 year of eligibility remaining. And then Malik Renaud comes in as a steady power forward from Indiana. And then lastly, Ernest Uday Jr. comes in from TCU, who is a guy who Jay Lucas had looked at when he was initially had transferred from Kansas, when Jay Lucas was still part of the Duke staff. Now Uday will join Lucas with Miami. I think they've done a decent job so far, but they've got a lot of work to do yet. NC State, new coach Will Wade has brought in a couple of his guys from McNeese State and Allen Breed and Kadir Copeland. Still, probably a lot more moves to be made. Only 2 guys coming in, a lot more moves to be made for NC State. North Carolina, very interesting offseason for North Carolina here. They've got a couple of guys in. Henry Vasar is probably a piece that they wish they had last season, a true 7-foot center to complement Ben Allen Lubin. And Jonathan Powell, a guy who made over 2 threes a game last season with West Virginia. But they have lost Jalen Washington. He didn't step forward in the way a lot of people thought he would last season. I get it. Elliot Cadeau, somewhat similar things could be said, although he had a much better season than Washington last year. And Ian Jackson, who had really big moments for them, but down the stretch definitely lost his, I shouldn't say rotation spot, but his priority in the North Carolina offense is probably the way to put that. All right, we're going to keep moving here. That's the wrong team. All right, having a little technical difficulties. So, all right, here we go. Notre Dame, they've really only lost 2 guys, J.R. Konetsky, but the big one, Tay Davis, transferring to Oklahoma. That's a big loss for Notre Dame, a program, honestly, similar to Georgia Tech, who I thought going into last season had a chance to take a step forward. Both teams dealt with injuries, and now both teams have had major pieces transfer out. Tay Davis leaving hurts, but they do have a big-time freshman coming in this season. So when I get to each individual team, I'll be better prepared to talk about the freshmen coming in, but not a good loss for the Notre Dame program with Tay Davis leaving, one of their better players. Now, this Pittsburgh team has really been hurt by the transfer portal. Jalen Lowe, both the Diaz Twins leaving Guillermo and Jorge. And then, some ancillary guys like Amsel Delilich leaving as well. Not the best. They've brought in Nojus Andrusitis, who was a decently highly rated recruit for Iowa State, as well as Deshaun Jackson, also from Iowa State. So that helps, but really it's the Jalen Lowe loss that hurts this program. Him transferring to Kentucky was their best player last year and expected him to be their best player next season. So they have work to do to replace him. SMU, not much in the transfer portal. Bring in Nana Owusu Anane. Not too familiar with his game, and losing Gerald Colbert. So probably a few more moves for SMU in the portal here. Stanford, only one guy in the portal, but it is a big one. Oziah Sellers. I guess two guys, Darren Serrano, but he didn't really play. Sellers was their third, the third guy in their big three, if you will, last season, but the only guy of those three who still had eligibility. So this one hurts Stanford. Now, there's a chance he comes back. He hasn't committed to anywhere yet, but as of right now, assuming he leaves, it is a big loss for the Stanford program. A couple more schools here. So Syracuse, I think one team's loss is another's gain, and they've had a really good transfer portal. Yes, they've lost a number of guys, but this was not a good Syracuse team last year. Kyle Cuff probably hurts. Chris Bell, Peter Majastorovic hurts as well. And Eddie Lampkin, I guess, may have another year of eligibility. I thought he was done. Chris Bell, I really thought would play better last season. Wasn't the case, but I like what they've done. Bringing in Nate George, who I think was one of the better players in the ACC last season, led the conference in assists and took a step forward as a scorer. And then the other Nate Kings, I think is really underrated. Guy who played at the NAIA level, missed the previous year due to an ACL injury, but came back last season for Oregon State, put up pretty good numbers, made about 2 threes a game, 6'5", wing, can defend a little bit, and can really shoot the three as a lefty, 46% from three, 45% from three. And then the two big guys they brought in are similar, in William Kyle and Ibrahim Saore. Undersized bigs at 6'9", but can defend and rebound. So I like what they've done with Syracuse. I think they're one of the winners so far in the early portal season. For some reason, I keep accidentally clicking on Cal here. Move on to our next program of the ACC, which is going to be here, Virginia. Tough portal run so far for Virginia. I mean, it makes sense. They lost their coach, Tony Bennett, before the start of the season. They're moving in another direction, bringing in Ryan Odom from VCU. So a lot of guys are leaving, and we got to wait and see on this one. The only guy that they've brought in, they've lost most of the roster, has been Duke Miles. So got to give new head coach Odom some time to fill out the rest of this roster. I would say, like most of these teams, but especially Virginia, incomplete. Similar to Florida State, although they've brought in more guys in Miami. Now, Virginia Tech is interesting to me. I thought Coach Young did a pretty good job with this roster last season with what he had. And it's very interesting to me that all 5 of the guys, Patrick Wessler, Ryan Jones didn't play very much, Rodney Brown did, Jaden Young did, Rex Steiner did. All of these guys are still uncommitted. So I wouldn't be surprised if 1 or 2 of these guys ends up coming back to Blacksburg, and they bring in Amani Hansberry, who played some good minutes as an undersized big for West Virginia. He will likely replace, who am I thinking of? The big man, Elijah Poteet, as the starting big next to Toby Lawal, assuming he comes back. And lastly, Wake Forest. They've had a very interesting transfer portal. Parker Friedrichsen, I thought could have made a step forward last season. Just didn't work for him. I think it was a good transfer going to Davidson, step down in competition. He's a really good shooter. So I think if he can just get his confidence, he could have a really good year for Davidson. Davin Cosby leaving. He got hurt, didn't come back. That definitely hurt Wake Forest. Tyler Johnson, this was pretty expected. He just wasn't the point guard that they needed. Efton Reed, I'm surprised he has eligibility similar to Eddie Lampkin, and Churchill Abbas. I thought could have had a more prominent role as the backup big, but they just never really utilized him, so I understand him transferring. And the two guys that they've brought in so far, Cooper Schweiger from Valparaiso, had some decent numbers at Valpo, and Miles Coven, a guy I'm a little bit more familiar with from Purdue, a guy who's looking for a bigger role this season with Wake Forest. And I think he could have a similar, maybe not quite the same. It wasn't the same pedigree coming out of high school, but a similar breakthrough season as to what happened with Hunter Salas when he came over from Gonzaga. He will be utilized much more with Wake Forest. That is Colvin. And he has the ability with his athleticism and shooting ability to score inside and out. A really good pickup for Wake Forest. So I think we've had a mixed bag so far in the portal. But let me know what you guys think about these early transfer portal thoughts. Who do you think are some of the winners and losers of the ACC so far? And I'll be back shortly. Peace.